Left of the box. And more from Colin DeMello, Ontario Premier Doug Ford with a hat tip for incoming President Trump. Canada is not for sale. And we see this, and this is how right-wingers like to communicate with each other, is through hats. Because Donald Trump has his, Make America Great hat. Well, he has his little gray hat on, and on it says, Canada is not for sale. He's made a whole hat, and I'm sure he's selling that a lot and making money off of that for his own campaign and goods. But just worth noting here, Saul Mamakwa saying, also treaty lands are not for sale. There's a lot of things that people don't take into consideration when we talk about Canada becoming the 51st state. Because there's a lot of land up here that's unceded, a lot of land that Canada never took, and a lot of land that has since gone back to being Indigenous land, like Indigenous controlled land. This whole idea of Doug Ford, Danielle Smith selling Alberta to the United States doesn't actually work the way that they think it works, because a lot of the times they like to think that they own everything in the province, whereas they don't. And then Dr. Adil Shamaji also pointing out, yes, Canada not for sale, but you know what is apparently? The Greenbelt Ontario Place of Science Centre, Service Ontario, and Minister Zoning Orders. You can say Canada is not for sale, but sell off Ontario every day. We see you, Doug Ford. And photoshopped, I sold off the Greenbelt onto that stupid hat that Doug Ford is wearing. And this is very true, and some of the reasons why I was so kind of perturbed by Frank Dominic's video about, you know what, Doug Ford should run as Liberal leader because he could beat Pierre Poilievre and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, he seems to think that Doug Ford would be better than Pierre Poilievre. And it's like, really, I think all of their things kind of cancel each other out, and they're equally as bad. Because Doug Ford has literally sold off so much of this province. Why would he stop here when there's so much he could sell off of the rest of Canada? And a lot of this does go to American corporations and stuff too. It's not to the benefit of Canadians, just the benefit of the corporations and wealthy few. So if Doug Ford was in the position to have more power across the country, what do you think that would look like? Really? Do you really think he wouldn't start expanding all these outrageous things that he's been doing? These things that have been costing billions upon billions of dollars? This guy, he speaks a good game, but he is a horrible person. So bad. And just, again, pointing this out here. So somebody just saying, it's taken a mind-bending, bizarre set of circumstances to turn Doug Ford into the beau idea of Captain Canada, but such times we're in. And Julie Lalonde just saying, Ford gave Elon Musk a $100 million contract to bring high-speed internet to Northern Ontario when Ottawa-based Canadian-owned Telstat was right there, not to mention selling Ontario Place. Don't be fooled by his supposed patriotism. He has and will sell us down the river. This is what's frustrating me so fucking much, is that everyone is seeing how Doug Ford is reacting to Donald Trump's tariffs and thinking, do you know what? That's who we need right now. He's the one that can hold things down. He's the guy that is strong and tough and can go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. Doug Ford is actually really good. I hate him on all these other things, but right now we really could use this. All of them need to shut the fuck up. I am pretty sure right now these tariffs are the best thing to have ever happened to Doug Ford. I'm sure he can't wait. He wants these tariffs to go through. And that's why he's going to call the election right then and there. Because that's the only way he's going to get reelected right now, is if he rides this wave. He is so unpopular. He has the most negative approval across the board in the country. He has scandals after scandals. There's reports of more of his scandals coming out. We're going to touch on some of the scandals that he's already been responsible for. Like, he is just a horrible piece of shit. But because of this one thing, if he were a whole election right now, this would absolutely put him over the top. Because, like, let's look again at who the competition is. We have these two people right here, who, if I don't put their names beside them, you don't know which one Bonnie Crombie is and which one Merritt Style is. The leaders of the Ontario NDP and Ontario Liberals. You can't tell them apart. They're the same fucking person. And I don't just mean that they look alike. They also have the exact same personality. They have the exact same stances and policy proposals. When you see them in front of the cameras, they act the exact same way. They are the same person, and they can't go toe-to-toe with Doug Ford. But since Doug Ford is so unpopular, chances are one of these two, I don't know, it's a coin toss, would have a chance of actually making gains in the next provincial election. But because of this one fucking thing, the tariffs, people are suddenly thinking, you know what, that Doug Ford guy, really, we need him right now. He's the one, because it's a whole bunch of fucking Canadian nationalists being miffed over the joke Donald Trump keeps on telling. And I don't say joke lightly, because I fully believe Donald Trump intends to try everything he says he's going to do. But it's not the province's responsibility. International relationships, foreign trade, foreign relations, that's a federal issue that Doug Ford is riding the wave of right now, because he's the only one out there that has forcefully, from the beginning, been calling out Donald Trump. You've had other people like Charlie Angus, who's a retiring MP, so who gives a fuck what he thinks? Elizabeth May has actually said something strong, but her and her other, sitting MP in the House of Commons, not really going to do much. But Doug Ford, he's been on the media circuit. He's been going around. He's been making it loud and proud that he's Canadian and he's not going to put up with these tariffs, and he's going to be bold and strong. And these fucking tariffs are the best thing to happen to him, because this will help him win. And this is why he will be calling an election the instant these tariffs go through, because he knows that will help him win. But you still haven't figured out which one Bonnie Crombie is and which one Merritt Style is. Just so infuriating that this is a thing right now, because we're going to get into a reminder of some of the scandals that he is responsible for. Yet when you look on social media, you see so many people fawning over Doug Ford because of his strong stance against Donald Trump. You see people, it's like, oh, well, he could even be the leader of the Liberal Party because he's exactly what we need right now. And so many other people, it's like the fucking Mark Carney thing right now, where it's just a breath of fresh air. It's like, we need this. Like, we do want this right now. We want a leader to stand up and do this. But to negate everything else he is responsible for is just a whole lot of bullshit, and people need to pull their heads out of their asses. Like, this is not a good thing. What Doug Ford is doing is entirely in his own self-interest. If he didn't have his election on the line, his own party's, his power on the line, he'd be just as chicken shit as Danielle Smith. That is what's going on right now. And it is just so fucking infuriating that this is where we are, and that we're going to have two absolutely bonker elections coming up in Canada. Just a reminder of some of the things that Doug Ford is responsible for. Because here he is, absolutely saying that Doug Ford gives clearest hint of an early election here in Ontario. And I think I wanted the video for this one.
Stop wasting time talking about a merger that is never going to happen, and instead focus on our efforts on restoring the pride of Made in Canada and Made in the USA. Let's be unapologetic as we stand up for Canadian and American workers against the world. Together, let's usher in the new American and Canadian century. Let's build Fortress AmCan. Thank you for everyone for joining us today, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Well, that just goes to show you all the premiers are working hard. They're all reaching out to their counterparts down there. And I'm glad that Premier Smith went down there and had a couple-minute chat with them. That was important as well. But, this just goes to show us, we have the tools in our toolbox, no matter, and I'm speaking for Ontario, not for the rest of the country.
Oh,
when
he's
it comes
speaking
to
for the rest of the
energy
country.
reliance, no matter if it's electricity or critical minerals that we have here. And that's a tool that we want to send more energy, more critical minerals, more silver down to the U.S. to support our greatest ally and friend. Well, let's take a look at what happens on January 20th or 21st. And all depends on what sort of tariffs he's putting in there. But I know one thing, his number one target, the bullseye, is on the backs of hardworking Ontario workers. And I will do everything I can in my power to protect the workers of Ontario and also Canadians across the board. Well, let's look at it this way. Nothing's been decided. Let's see where the tariffs go. But what Merritt Stiles and Bonnie Crombie, they obviously, not worried about spending tens of billions of dollars and getting approval from the people.
He has already wasted tens of billions of dollars on stupid ass projects here. Because you have the sale of the Greenbelt, but then you also have that stupid tunnel under the highway he wants to build, the moving of liquor into stores a year early, the Staples Service Ontario thing, which we'll be mentioning in some of the things, like the amount of money he has wasted, like with the whole Science Center and Ontario Place Spa thing. He has wasted so much money, but then he goes and as a treat for the people will do things like, oh, you don't need to pay to register your license anymore. So he's eliminating sources of revenue for the government while wastefully spending billions of dollars. That is such a recipe for disaster.
Getting a mandate from the people. I believe if you're going to go out there, we're going to be hit the hardest, bar none, over any jurisdiction in the country. They're targeting Ontario. They're targeting good-paying jobs in Ontario. And I'm going to fight with every tool I have in our toolbox to protect Ontario jobs, to protect Canadian jobs. And they may think it's okay just to go ahead and throw off our fiscal plan moving forward. I don't think that. I think if it comes to it, and we have to spend tens of billions of dollars, we go to the people. Let the people decide. It's their money. It's not the government's.
So basically he's saying we should go and have an election for a new mandate because everything that's happening, we can't just work from here. We have to start from scratch. We have to start a new mandate, redo our money bills and all that sort of stuff. And just a little bit more proof that an election is coming. This is from Global News. An internal email sent by Executive Director of the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party invited staff and volunteers to participate in person and virtual campaigning training in 2025. It's a chance for you to have individuals who will likely assume key campaign roles in the next election to learn the fundamentals of running a successful local campaign, the internal email obtained by Global News reads. So there's not really an election in Ontario due till next year, but it's entirely possible, like I said, Doug Ford will bump it up for the reasons I've already stated. The goal in the email was to prepare local writing campaigns team ahead of the next election, but did not specify when the volunteers would head to the polls. The training sessions are focused on campaign fundamentals, voter communication and identification, volunteer management, and getting out the vote. I wish the NDP did this. I have participated in campaigns before. They don't do this. Part of the reason why the NDP never really makes gains is that they have what they do to their riding associations, how organized they are, is shit. It is so shit what they do. Completely unorganized, completely behind on tasks. They're not connected. They're not communicating. But, the Conservatives, they have a good ground game. While one preparedness meeting has already taken place, at least 5 more virtual and in-person training are scheduled for January and February. At least 2 in London and Toronto are scheduled for in-person training sessions. I'm just wondering, how difficult would it be for me to get into one of those? While all provinces' parties have been recruiting candidates, preparing their election war chest, and drafting their platforms, the opposition parties have been urging Ford to avoid an early election call. And also this dumbass statement from Doug Ford. Again, he's like such a horrible person on so many levels, but people are just giving him a pass right now because he looks strong compared to Donald Trump, talking about the tariffs. But what he says here, come on, this guy is just so...
Hortons. Do you understand, like, when I was up there, they didn't even have a Tim Hortons. It was Minister Greg Rickford that went up there with a big check for a plaza they're going to build, that people are actually going to be able to go to a Tim Hortons. Do you understand, like, when I was up...
When asked about tense relations with First Nation communities in Northern Ontario today, Doug Ford's response was, "You don't understand. Like, when I was up there, they didn't even have a Tim Hortons." Wait until you see their healthcare situation, Doug. Or their water, or their infrastructure, or their education. Yeah. But oh no, they don't have a Tim Hortons. A lot of these places don't even have airports that are big enough to have planes come in that would, keep the cost of goods down because the government doesn't want to invest in just making the runways a little bit longer. Their healthcare situation and stuff. And I get a lot of this is federal responsibility, but there's also a lot of provincial responsibility tied in with this as well. Oh no Tim Hortons. The horror. If only this not Canadian corporation could have, a stake in the land up there. Oh my God. Like, that's the thing. People are still trying to insist that Tim Hortons is a Canadian icon, that it is like the brand of Canada. It's not even Canadian owned. It hasn't been for decades. But they still love to pitch it as if it were one. But you know what? Nobody's life is going to be improved in, remote northern communities by having a fucking Tim Hortons. That's not a thing. It's not. There's so much other stuff that needs to be done first. So much. Oh my God. Doug Ford is just such a piece of trash. And here we have from Richard Southern and City News, the FAO, Freedom of... I'm too tired for this. The FAO, Ontario Financial Watchdog, finds the Ford government moving 9 Service Ontario into staple stores will cost taxpayers $11.7 million, more than if they were left in private operators. While Staples has increased hours, there are 30% fewer service desks. The FAO did find it would cost more if the government renewed its agreements with the 9 original operators with expanded service levels. However, operators tell me they never asked to do this. The FAO found Staples, a company owned by a U.S. private equity firm. Sorry, Doug Ford, what was that about Canada First? Is receiving $1.7 million in one-time setup costs and $10 million in labor and overhead costs over the duration of the agreement for something the company admitted it will looking at to boost sales. I think there's a typo there. For something that the company admitted it will look to boost sales. So I'm sorry, Doug Ford, what was all of that about Canada First? Because these Service Ontario jobs right here, small business owners were thrown out of work when these 9 Service Ontario outlets were moved from what the FAO now reveals is a higher cost to taxpayers. I talked to one of them last year and who said she was left high and dry. Remember, Doug Ford, Canada First, don't you want people, the people, small business owners in Canada, to actually keep their jobs as opposed to spending millions to sell it out to an American corporation? 680 News Radio first broke this story a year ago. Here's the full FAO report. New statement from spokesperson for Minister Todd McCarthy. It appears the government is sticking to its claim that this savings taxpayer money, when in fact the FAO found it costing taxpayers $800,000. To put the Service Ontarios into fucking staples. And for those of you watching who don't know what a Service Ontario is, because you're not in Ontario or you're American, it's where you go to get things like your driver's license renewed or take care of like government fees on things, get your health care renewed, like all that government things minus getting a passport type stuff. You go to the Service Ontario for that. And they moved 9 of them into staples, American corporation, to make money at the expense of small businesses run by Canadians. He would absolutely sell out Canada and Ontario in a heartbeat. It's just right now, it's in his political interest to have a hard stand against Donald Trump. If it weren't for that, he'd be just as chicken shit as Danielle Smith. Doug Ford loses transparency fight to block release of personal cell phone records. Again, from Global News.
Doug Ford's brand, handing out his private cell phone number to taxpayers and business owners alike.
Get your cell phones out, because I'm going to give you my cell number.
After years of trying to keep his personal phone logs a secret, Ford may now be forced to hand those records over to the public after Ontario's Information and Privacy Commissioner ruled that the Premier's private calls are part of the public record.
The decision of the Commission, I think, is the right decision. I mean, the principle behind access to information is the public has a right, a default right to information, except for certain exclusions and exceptions.
In late 2022, Global News filed a Freedom of Information Act request to access the...
You just remember like all the controversy down in the States because Hillary Clinton was using her private emails or some bullshit like that. That's the guy, right? Was handing out his personal cell phone number and then trying to claim, oh no government business was being done on it, so I don't need to release these records. If this was the Democrats or the Liberals or the NDP, oh my God. Like there would be such an outrage, such a cry, but it's to the point where it's like, what is that phrase? Like if one person gets murdered, it's a tragedy, but when something like, tens of thousands of people get murdered in genocide, then people just tend to gloss it over because they can't comprehend it. It's kind of like one controversy is worth attention, but when you have so many, it kind of just gets blanked out of people's minds.
The records of the Premier's private cell phone, allowing the public a window into who calls the Premier and how those calls influence government business. For 2 years, the Ford government fought back, claiming those calls are all related to constituent...
So I took a course before I tried to get involved in politics and tried to become a candidate. I took a course called The Government of Canada. It was an online course, really informative as to how the federal government works and stuff. And for part of my course, they wanted you to go see a question period. But since I couldn't travel all the way to Ottawa for that, it was fine that I could just travel to Toronto, to Queen's Park. And so I sat in the galleries looking down at them while they were doing these things. You see how Doug Ford is on his cell phone here? You'd be surprised on how much they'll take their cell phones and they'll do this. As in, show the people in the gallery what their fucking passwords are to unlock the phone. They don't take that's just, like, you're not allowed to take anything into the gallery. Like, you're not even allowed to take a pencil. Because you're not allowed to protest or do anything like that when you're in the gallery. So, your purse, you have to go through a metal detector, but you're not allowed to take your purse, a camera, anything to write on, not even like a marker in case you like write something on your chest and be like, ugh. So you're not allowed to take anything into the gallery with you. But, to remember, it's pretty easy. And then be like, to your buddy outside, so you want this politician's cell phone? I'm actually astonished it hasn't happened yet. And then you also find out which ones don't have a lock on their cell phone.
Concerns and not subject to public disclosure.
Those are confidential conversations. I help people about their health, about other personal issues they're facing.
About my backroom deals with corporations that I don't want out to the public. They are confidential phone calls.
And they do not want that out in the public.
But the Information and Privacy Commissioner views it differently. The Premier does not use his government-issued cell phone, meaning at least some of the calls on his private device are related to taxpayer-funded business.
Okay, that's like, if you're going to do this, at least put in the illusion of, deniability or something. At least use your government phone. So then you can complain, oh no, I've kept it separate. But to not use your government phone at all, it's kind of a dead giveaway. You're doing government business on your private phone.
The government has now been ordered to obtain the Premier's call logs for public release.
I mean, the reason governments make phones available to politicians is so that they can have their personal phone for personal business and their government phone for government business. We have a Premier who said, well, no, I'm not separating those things.
But now, another twist in the fight. The Ford government wants a judicial review of the decision, effectively fighting the order to release the records.
Doug Ford is running away from an RCMP investigation.
So that one is Bonnie Crumby.
That could result in criminal charges.
It's unclear how long the process will last. What is clear is taxpayer dollars will be spent to prevent taxpayers from getting a better picture of the Premier's primary mode of communication.
Okay, pop quiz. Which one was Bonnie Crumby? And just a reminder of what Doug Ford's Ontario looks like. Whoa, what's the long line in the crowd in the snow for? Is it tickets to a Taylor Swift concert? Nah. A new cell phone being released? No. A new gaming station? What about, you're in line to see someone famous? No. A physician. A physician. Setting up new practice in Brockton, Ontario, said he'd take the first 500 patients who showed up, the line of people waiting years for a family doctor wrapped around the block. Yeah.
It's insane. This is just not.
Oh. It's mono. I have to put in the other earphone to hear what they're saying.
It's insane. This is just not what the medical healthcare system is supposed to be like in Ontario.
Got here about 5:30 and been on the Healthcare Connect list for about...
Oh my gosh, sorry. They switched if it's the right or the left coming out. Figure that news corporations could get a better handle on this sort of audio issue.
Got here about 5:30 and been on the Healthcare Connect list for about 10 years now. Haven't had a doctor for longer than that, so kind of a strange way to have people sign up for a doctor, but hopefully I get one.
Like, I don't even know if I have a family doctor right now in my situation. Like I said, I still have access to walk-in clinics, things of that sort, but it's just so frustrating. Not having that stability with a doctor, not having that history. Because I remember when I was a kid, you get your annual checkups and everything, and the doctor would actually remember who you were because they weren't swapped with a bazillion patients. And you could go in often enough that you could actually build that rapport so that they could be like, oh, this is unusual compared to the last time that you were in, and actually have that connection. You don't get that anymore. You're dealing with a stranger every time you go into the doctor's office because there's just certain things that when you walk in, you might not be comfortable telling a stranger, or you might not feel comfortable having a stranger just look into things, literally. Like, it's just,